This week, we're talking about delicious motivation.
You are listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It, the podcast for ambitious, high-achieving women who are ready to stop feeling stressed about work and kiss burnout goodbye forever. Whether you're starting a business or staying in your day job, this show will give you the coaching and guidance you need to start loving your work today. Here's your host, career coach Corey Lynn.
Hello, 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 and happy Wednesday. I hope this day is finding you very, very well. And if not, that's okay too. And we have lots of tools and things that could maybe help. Not that you need to be helped. It's totally okay to have negative feelings sometimes, which is something we talk about on the podcast all the time. But I'm feeling delighted, and feeling delighted's super fun. So I just hope you are getting to have that experience today too. And speaking of delightful things, I have a delightful thing I want to share with y'all. So I was just on a coaching call with one of my clients. It was the final call of their package. We were wrapping up. And as part of that, we were taking the time to look back at what they had created in our time working together. And this client came to me because they wanted to make more money in their business. And they had been in their business for at least 4 years. And all of those years they had made, I think they said less than $40K every single year. And before they had a business, they had been a VP. They'd been making about $200K a year. And their business was in the same industry. So I think it was kind of, a shock and a disappointment to not make as much money as they'd been making in their full-time role. And so this client hired me with the goal of making a bunch of more money in their business. And the goal that we actually set was that they would work towards making $100K in their business while not stressing out, while taking excellent care of themselves, while being aligned and having fun and feeling a lot of ease, rather than sort of hustling and grinding to try to get to that $100K. And since 2022 just wrapped up, we got the numbers. And guess what? That client made a little bit more than $100K in 2022. And that's the first time in their business ever that they have made it into six figures. And I'm just beyond thrilled for them. And I wanted to share it with y'all too, because I think this is a perfect example of the kind of thing that you can use coaching to create. So just to give you all the details, my starter package with coaching, whether you sign up for a group or one-on-one, is 6 months. And this client added on an extra 3 months because when their 6 months ended, they were kind of at this really critical point where we could see that they had already laid extremely powerful groundwork to hit their goal, but they were going to be heading into a few months of challenges. And so we decided to lengthen the coaching package. So in 9 months of coaching together, this client created $100K in their business for the first time ever. And first of all, they created the cash. That's so exciting, money in the pocket, but also they proved to themselves that they could do it and that they could create that kind of money in a business versus having to do it in a job. And this podcast obviously is called Love Your Job Before You Leave It, but I am here to support you in all of your career adventures, whether it's a JOB job where you're an employee in someone else's business, or whether you have your own business, because to me, having your own business is also a job. And I know firsthand how hard it can be, how challenging it can be to run a business successfully and make money doing it. And so if that's what your job is, the job you've chosen, I want to support you in that as well. So big shout out to that client. I'm sharing this story with permission, but they did decide to remain anonymous. So we're not going to name them, but it's pretty exciting. And it's just the beginning, right? Because now that this client has made six figures in their business in 1 year, they can do it again, and they can do it again, and they can do it again, and they can shorten that timeline. And so they can go on to create even more money in less time, which is something that I help a lot of my clients do. And it's something that I've done in my own business as well. So that is exactly the kind of win and result clients get when they work with me. That client has worked with me one-on-one. My group clients get similar incredible results in their businesses, in their jobs, and in other areas of their lives as well. And if you want to talk about what incredible results you could look forward to by working together, you can scoot on over to my website and sign up for a consultation call, either for one-on-one or for SAF coaching. Okay, now let's move on to the topic of our podcast today, which is a concept I'm calling delicious motivation. As anyone who's hung out around the podcast knows, delicious is one of my favorite words. I use it all the time, and I think it's a really perfect word for this concept. So, a while back, I was talking to my SAF clients, and they were sharing wins. And one of the clients told me that they had been wanting to kind of feel more at home in their space and like decorate it and make it feel cozier and like some place they would want to like welcome people over. If I'm remembering correctly, this client has actually lived in their space for several years, but they hadn't like set it up in a way that felt really yummy to them. And so that was one of the things that they were working on in SAF. And they did this thing where they decided that this was before the holiday. So they decided they were going to get a Christmas tree, and they committed to themselves to get the Christmas tree. They may have even gone out and bought it, but like didn't bring it home. And they used that like knowledge that they were going to get the Christmas tree as like motivation to move forward in, cozifying their space and making their space more of what they wanted and making their space something where they could like bring the Christmas tree. And as I was talking to the client, I was like, oh, it sounds like you motivated yourself like I think they called it positive motivation, but I was like, this is delicious. We're going to call it delicious motivation. And so I got the client's permission to share this concept with y'all. And now I'm going to. So that's like the basis of this idea and the story of the client who created it. But what I want you to think about is, where in your life are you trying to get yourself to do something, but you're using like fear, shame, judgment, anxiety, embarrassment, even like anger, right? So often I see this with my clients where they want to do something and then they don't do it. And then they just like judge the shit out of themselves. They just like beat the shit out of themselves mentally with how they think about themselves. They critique themselves. They call themselves lazy. They call themselves stupid. And of course, this does not motivate them to go do the thing. It just makes them feel like shit. And again, this could happen with anger too. I see so many people get so angry with themselves that they're not doing the thing that they said they would do, or the thing that they, committed to doing. And then again, from the anger, often beating themselves up, railing against themselves, calling themselves names. And it's just deeply unpleasant. And I don't think it's effective at all. The data that I see suggests it's not effective. And here's the other thing. Even if it were effective, ew, like it just feels terrible. Like why? Like there are lots of effective ways to do things, and some of them are more effective than others. And the pitch I'm going to give you is that delicious motivation is much more effective. But even if they were equally effective, why would we ever choose to motivate ourselves with shame? Why would we ever choose to motivate ourselves with anger? Why would we ever choose to motivate ourselves with anxiety or self-punishment when it's equally available to us to motivate ourselves deliciously, to motivate ourselves with joy, to motivate ourselves with delight, to motivate ourselves with peace, to motivate ourselves with just like yumminess, right? And I can already hear a lot of you being like, that'll never work, which I think is a hilarious criticism considering the shame, judgment, anger, guilt, anxiety spiral often doesn't work. And yet people are so committed to that one. So just like a little cheeky food for thought on that is like, okay, maybe it doesn't work 100% of the time, but neither does this other terrible thing that has these awful, side effects of making you hate yourself and feel like shit. Just saying. Okay. But my pitch actually is that I think delicious motivation does work. And I think it's something that I use a lot in my own life, although I'd never called it that. The way I think about delicious motivation is I think about it as like a commitment to my future self, and a commitment to my future self's joy, and a commitment to my future self having like the things she wants and needs to have a good life or a good experience of life. So this is something I've actually used for years and years. And I think I've done this even before I learned the coaching tools I use and teach now. And so this is something I've used to get myself to grocery shop when I don't feel like it. It's something I've used to get myself to do laundry. It's something I've used to get myself to do dishes. It's something I've used to get myself to apply for jobs back when I had to do that. And it's something I still use in my business when I'm like, there's something that needs to get done in my life, but that like I don't particularly feel like. So that's the point at which we could come in with judgment, shame, anxiety, anger, like you should, you have to. If you're a good person, you do it. I'm going to be angry if you don't. I'm going to judge you if you don't. You're lazy if you don't, blah, 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 all that negative bullshit. Or we could come in with, oh, it's going to be so great when this is done. it's going to be so wonderful when this is completed. It's going to be like so yummy and delicious for me when I have done this thing. Like, it's going to be so wonderful later to have all the groceries I want to have in the house. It's going to be so wonderful later to have this exact bottle of wine I really like in the house already chilled for me. It's going to be so great to wake up tomorrow and have clean socks. It's going to be so great once I've posted this content on social media, because like sometimes posting our content on social media like can feel uncomfortable, right? It can feel vulnerable and uncomfortable to put yourself out there. For me too, still, right? The way I handle this, again, the delicious motivation is thinking of like how happy I'll be later when it's done. And then for this one, the other delicious motivation is I think about y'all. I think about the people out there who are suffering, who hate their jobs, who are like, just so overwhelmed and upset about the prospect of working for another 40 or more years in a job they don't like 40 plus hours a week with only a few weeks of vacation a year, just having miserable experiences, just being so stressed out. I think about y'all. And so that's delicious motivation too. When I think about how much it's going to help you when I put my information out there. I think about how much it's going to help you, like when I do my little social media posts, when I record my podcast, because as I've talked about before on the podcast, even though I love talking to y'all every week, 5 minutes before I'm supposed to record the podcast, my brain's always like, I don't want to. It feels vulnerable. What if I say something stupid? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And so that's the moment at which I could go with that, vicious motivation of like, you have to, because it's on your calendar, or like anxious motivation of like if I don't do it now, I'll have to do it later. And like, so just get it done. Or like the angry motivation of like, don't piss me off by not doing what you said you would do. Or the shame motivation of like, if you were a good person who actually cared about your business, you would. All of those motivations, like you get to decide for you. And like, if you have like interesting, like emotional BDSM with like that kind of self-talk, like, and that works for you and you like it and it's yummy, fucking do what you want to. Like, I support you. But for me, it just makes me feel like shit. And then when I feel like shit, I don't want to do anything. I'm like completely unmotivated. I want to just sort of like laze about on the couch and watch like a lot of murder mystery TV, which is also what I do when I'm happy sometimes. So, it can be for both things. But it doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel delicious. And it actually isn't motivating for me to talk shit on myself in that way. And I don't think it's motivating for most of y'all either. Again, like you get to choose for yourself. And I realize that like some of us, feel delicious and motivated about things that others of us are like, what? And like, yeah, I'm like all for that. But for the most part, I think it is much more effective for many people to use delicious motivation and to think more deeply about like the yummy reasons why they're doing something versus like the yucky things they'll say to themselves if they don't. Now, let's be clear. Sometimes when you're using delicious motivation, there's still going to be sort of like the middle part where like you don't really want to do the thing, right? Like I don't 100% remember because it's been a while since we had the conversation, but I think with that client, like they used the Christmas tree idea as a way to like positively and delightfully motivate themselves to take some action that they had, perhaps been dreading or dragging their feet on or just like not prioritizing, that maybe was either going to feel unpleasant or perhaps just boring. And it's like that for me too. Like sometimes the positive motivation, the delicious motivation that I use, like then it's like that carries me through something that's like not my favorite. Like I do all the grocery shopping for our house because like that's part of the set of agreements that Alex and I made. Like Alex and I like to make, this is like probably its own podcast, but Alex and I like to make agreements about who does what. And like a lot of it's based on like not doing the things that we each hate. So Alex does not like grocery shopping. So I do all the grocery shopping, not all of it, but like almost all of it. And there's other stuff that she does all of that I don't like doing, like taking out the trash. But again, it's like, just because I'm willing to do it and like it's my assigned chore within the house or my chosen chore within the house doesn't mean it's like super fun. Like I almost never feel like going to the grocery store. It's not like a super fun activity for me, but it's something I'm willing to do. And I do think it feels so much better when I use that like delicious motivation. And for that one in particular, like there's the delicious motivation of like, I'll be so happy it's done because it's my chore and it's my, assigned and chosen job to get it done. But it's also like, I'll be so happy it's done. I'll be so happy to have the groceries. Alex will be so happy to have the groceries. I'll be so happy seeing her be so happy. And so there is like sort of the drudgery in the middle, But it's also like so much more fun and so much more interesting to think about like all those yummy reasons I'm doing it and all the yumminess that's being created for me. Okay, so how could this look for you? Probably all kinds of different ways, but I'm guessing there's at least one thing in your personal life or career that you have been trying to get yourself motivated to do that you haven't done. And maybe you've tried yummy, delicious motivation, but if you're anything like most people, you've actually probably tried the other kind of motivation, which is like threatening, cajoling, convincing, beating yourself up, raging, and then feeling terrible about yourself. And then like I have that podcast also about like the associative connection that the brain makes where like you can get a pleasure gloss or a displeasure gloss. So if you try to motivate yourself to do something for a while and then you don't do it, you can actually sort of create like a negative association with that thing. It's like when people want to write a novel and the more they don't write the novel, the more the novel becomes like a symbol of pain. And then when they go to write the novel, not only is it the hard work of writing a novel, because even for people who love writing, writing is hard. For most of us, there's probably one or two who have a great time and good for you. But for most of us, writing a novel is hard. But then they have that secondary pain of like all that self-judgment and self-criticism and shame about not having done it earlier. Versus delicious motivation would be kind of bringing them back to like, why am I even trying to write a novel? And like, what if I'm allowed to have a blank slate? And like, what if I don't have to beat myself up for not doing this sooner? And like, what if I could just focus on the yummy parts of this? And what if I could focus on like how good it's going to feel to write it and how proud I'm going to be of myself? And what if I go ahead and give myself a little bit of that pride and delight now? And I use that pride and delight as like a fuel to like carry me into this thing that I want to do, but that's also going to be work and it's going to be discomfort. And I can love myself into and through that versus using this as like this way to like measure myself negatively and this way to like heap judgment upon myself. So for you, anything in your life or career that you've been wanting to do that you've not been able to do, and you've been telling yourself you like just need to be more motivated or like just need to like stop being lazy. Like, what if we just delete all those things you've been saying to yourself, all the criticisms, all the judgment, and just come at it afresh with like, what would be delicious about doing this? If I frame this as like an opportunity for deliciousness, what's available in that framework? How could I be kind to myself about this? How could I focus on the delightfulness of it being done? How can I focus on the reasons I'm doing it are a place that serves often like a lot of deliciousness? And kind of just like switch the entire framing of the activity from something that like it's bad about you that you didn't do it to like something that could be wonderful and you can choose to do it and it can feel wonderful while you do it, even if there's some drudgery in the middle, and that you can use this deliciousness to motivate yourself instead of motivation having to be this like weigh your heart on yourself. I just think there's like so much of us being so hard on ourselves so much of the time. And it's not that that's always a bad thing, but I think we just have an overabundance of it. I think we have most of us, maybe not all of us, but I think most of us have too much being hard on ourselves and not enough like connecting with delight and not enough connecting with deliciousness and not enough like having fun and being silly and playful. And I think there's room for that, even in serious things like career and motivation. And really, at the end of the day, I just invite you to try it. Like you've probably been trying vicious motivation for years. So why don't you just try on delicious motivation and see what happens? And you can always go back to the other one, like if you don't like it or if it doesn't work for you. But I just think like, why not have it the delicious way? Why not? Because at the end of the day, everything, all of our achievements, all of our accomplishments, like loving our job, doing a better job at our job, feeling more confident, it's all really about having a good life and having a good experience of that life. And deliciousness is definitely a way to do that. And I do believe that deliciousness is also a great way to just get a lot of shit done. So try it on, see what you think. And if you really want to absorb this concept into your life in a really deep way, I invite you to come work with me in coaching, either one-on-one or in SAF, because we take this work really deeply to the next level when we coach together, and you'll be amazed what you can create when we do that. You'll be creating results just like that client I started telling you about at the beginning of the call who created 100K for the first time in their business. And you'll be creating results like that SAF client I told you about who spontaneously on their own found a way to deliciously motivate themselves and then came back and told the group all about it. And that's what I want for you. I want for you to create amazing results and have a really wonderful life. And I invite you to come work one-on-one or in a group with me as a way to do that. All right, that's what I have for y'all this week. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Love Your Job Before You Leave It. We'll have another episode for you next week. And in the meantime, if you're feeling super fired up, head on over to CoreyLynn.com for more guidance and resources.